can do them really easily out of iManage. We've got a few slides just to go through, sort of set the scene as to where we are and give you a bit of background information on electronic signatures generally. And just firstly, just have a quick look at the webinar controls that you've got in front of you so you know how those work. You should have a little panel that looks something like the one on screen now. If you want to slide the panel away, there's a little arrow in the top left-hand corner, a little orange arrow facing to the right, and that just enables you to slide the control panel out of the way of the screen if it's in the way at the moment. We've got two different ways of asking questions. The first one is you can put your hand up. If you do that, then we'll try and figure out how to unmute you from this end, and then you'll be able to ask a question to the group so everybody will hear you. And the second way is you can just type your question into the question box there and click send, and then we get to see the question at this end and we can read the question out and hopefully answer it. The questions tend to go one of two ways on these. Either we get absolutely loads and it's too many really to deal with on the webinar, in which case we'll collate them all and send the questions and our replies out to everyone that's attended. We're also going to collate the questions that we've been asked over the series of webinars. This is the fourth one that we've run, and put them into a document that we'll circulate towards the end of the week as well, with some useful links and tips and one thing and another. So that's how questions go. And then the final thing, and I always put this in to remind me to click the button to make it record. We are recording the session, so if you could just be aware of that if you're asking questions, but also it means that we'll be able to send you the recording and the link, so everyone that's been attended the webinar will get a recording. So if a colleague hasn't been able to attend, please let them see it, or if you want to review it, you've got an opportunity to review. So just in terms of the agenda, very simple agenda, and we're going to try and keep it fairly brief. We've just got this introduction, and then really we're just going to look at what electronic signatures are. Then a question that we get asked an awful lot, which is it legal? We'll go through why it is. And then probably a fairly obvious one, why do it? So why is this something that you as an organisation, a law firm, ought to be thinking about doing? We're going to have a very quick look at it in iManage, and then we've got a little bit of time at the end just for any questions if anyone's got anything they want to ask. Just by way of introduction to us, I know we know quite a few people on the webinar this afternoon, but those of you that we don't, this is us. We're based down near Winchester in Hampshire. We've been doing legal software, so that's software for the legal profession since about 2004. All of our clients are lawyers, either public sector or private sector. We've got a number of our own sort of complete products, particularly in the document bundling area. We've also got quite a lot of integrations between various systems, including iManage and others, and some online services such as the Adobe Sign system that we're going to look at today. But what we're really about as an organisation is process efficiency within legal. So what gets us out of bed in the morning is using technology to improve the lives of lawyers. Quick selection of the clients that we've got. We've got some quite big clients and we've got some very small clients. So it's roughly a 50-50 split between public and private sector. Most of our public sector work is legal departments of local authorities, and most of our private sector work is law firms, and we've got a few legal departments of corporates as well. So let's have a quick look at the Adobe Sign system and the electronic signatures in general. Really what we're trying to do is three things with this. The first thing that we want to be able to do is to enable the fee earner or the user to be able to send a document out for signature that they've produced via other means. So this might be a terms of business letter, or it might be a document that they need to get the client or some other people to sign. You can send multiple documents to multiple people as part of one operation. So if you have 3 documents to be signed by 5 people, that can all be sent as part of one operation. And the Adobe system will route the document through to the recipients in the order that you've presented them for signing. So it will handle the workflow of the signing process as well. Second thing that we want to be able to do is we want the fee earner to be able to have updates of the documents whilst they're going through their signing process. So from the moment the document's been created and sent out of the Adobe platform, you want to know whether the document's been viewed, you want to know when it's been signed, and you want the signed copy then downloaded and reattached back into your document store. You may also want to know if the document's been rejected, and we do see this with some of our clients, that documents get sent out to their clients and for whatever reason they don't want to proceed with the transaction and they'll reject the signing of the document. Again, that can be quite useful to find out early on rather than then spend the next 2 or 3 weeks chasing the client for something that they're not going to return. So update is quite an important part of the process. And finally, of course, we want to make sure that we get the signed documents back into the system and they're easily accessible. Now, what we've done with the iManage system, and you'll see this in a moment when we look at it, is that we bring the signed document back into the same workspace that the original source documents were sent from, and we then link the signed document back to the original source document via a related item, which is the little two-ended arrow that you can see on the screenshot there. So we'll see this when it comes back in the demonstration in a moment. Well, this is a question that we tend to get asked every time we talk to a client about this, which is it legal? Now, the electronic signatures have been around since about 2000. Well, they have been around since 2000 in England and Wales. Electronic communications was the one that gave them statutory effect, but that was an implementation of an EU directive. So 16, 17 years they've now been available. There's a recent update to the regulations called the eIDAS regulations, and these are really to rationalise the type and effect of electronic signatures on an EU-wide basis. So in the olden days, prior to eIDAS, we had what were usually referred to as electronic signatures and digital signatures, but the regulations have now consolidated them into 3 separate types. So for the first part, we've got basic. Basic electronic signature could simply be an exchange of emails agreeing to do something. We've then got advanced, and this is the one we're going to look at today. An advanced electronic signature requires unique identification of the sender and the signer. And that's normally done by sending the request for signing to an email address and then having the signer go through some form of authentication. That may be entering a password or authenticating themselves against some other service, but that will give you an auditable and identifiable signer. And then the final version is qualified. Now, qualified is what we used to call digital signatures, and to be a qualified signature, you've got to have a certified electronic signature held on an electronic signature device, and that could be something like a USB stick or a smart card. Now, these are becoming quite relevant, particularly in property transactions, because the Land Registry have recently released or are about to release a system that enables buyers or borrowers to sign their mortgage deeds online using qualified electronic signatures. Again, historically these were relatively difficult to get, but it's been made an awful lot easier to get now, and you can even get an electronic signature by going through various processes on the post office, and you can get that online. So it is becoming far more widespread. In terms of the type of signature that you need to use, that kind of depends on the jurisdiction that you're working in. Adobe have published quite a useful guide to this, the Guide to Electronic Signature Law, and if it does make a good read. We've made it available on the webinar today as a download, so please do grab a copy of it and have a read through. It's the first place to start, really, if you do business in a different jurisdiction and you're going to be using electronic signatures of some sort. Have a look at that and see what the requirements are. It tends to be jurisdiction-based and then also type of work-based. So, for example, there are some jurisdictions that insist that if you're doing or signing documents that would otherwise have to be witnessed, you have to use a qualified electronic signature. or maybe if you're doing land transactions, you have to use a particular type of electronic signature. So good document to read and a good place to start if you're looking at starting to do this more widely. Second document that we've made available on the downloads from the webinar today is the London Law Society's Note on Execution of Documents Using an Electronic Signature. Now this was published last year by the Finance and Commercial team or committee within the London Law Society, and it did cause a bit of a stir because it's one of the first times that sort of any part of the Law Society had stuck their head above the parapet and said that, that these are coming and here's really what you need to know and how they might be used. So it is a good document and interesting to read, and it has caused quite a lot of larger firms to sit up and take note of electronic document signing. So again, a document to look at, a good place to start if you're thinking about having a policy at your organisation to do this. Why should you do this? It probably stands to reason really, because it's a fairly straightforward process, but there are quite a lot of sort of underlying reasons. Most notably, obviously, you can get documents signed fast, which is a slightly obvious thing to say, but we're finding more and more law firms now operating a client-first policy, where they're actually starting to look at how they engage with their clients, and whereas in the olden days everything was done by printed letter, that's fine for the law firm and that works well, and historically has worked well for a long time, but increasingly clients are demanding engagement via other means. They're all very used to buying books off Amazon and ordering their shopping online, so why shouldn't they engage with their lawyers online as well? So providing electronic documents to the client that they can view and sign potentially on a mobile device or a PC or a tablet is a logical thing to do, and certainly the clients we've worked with that are introducing this kind of a policy, it has provided them with some competitive edge in order to be able to get the work through more quickly. Risk and compliance is another probably fairly obvious one. Up until this kind of technology, if you're looking at auditing your terms of business letters, or Rule 15 letters as they used to be in the olden days, really there is no way to do that on paper, unless you've got somebody who's checking all of these things as they come back in. Now that makes compliance a separate activity. What you can do with something like this is that you can make risk and compliance part of your process, so it becomes easier to comply than to not comply, and it's far more auditable because you can check who sent what to who and when it was viewed, when it was signed, when it was downloaded back into the system. So you do provide quite a high degree of auditability with this as well. There are some cost reasons in terms of WIP and cost of sale. Paper-based processes, even if you take something simple like a residential conveyancing transaction, you build delay in by sending documentation to the client on paper. Invariably the client doesn't sign it and they need to be reminded, which normally involves another letter. Now that can very easily build in a week or 2 weeks worth of delay into a transaction that is quite time sensitive. So if you can compress that time, then there's going to be a lockup benefit in the sense that the lockup won't be so long, and you'll be reducing the cost of sale as well, so you won't be spending quite so long chasing the client, and potentially in the case of a simple residential transaction you'll get to the billing point quicker. We've seen a lot of clients use this particularly in personal injury. We've got quite a few clients now using or sending out their terms of business letters via eSign in personal injury, and really the reason for that is that there's so much pressure to get the client signed before you can get the claim logged onto the claims portal. So it does make quite a difference, and the firms that we've worked with doing that have seen quite a reduction in their costs as well, because they no longer have to use sign-up agents and so on. So that's probably enough with me talking. So I'm just going to minimize the screen here. We'll go over to iManage. Now, for iManage at the moment, we happen to be using DeskSite here, and I know that there's a mix of people that use DeskSite and FileSite. The functionality is identical, and from a development point of view, actually, the development is identical as well. We find it's easier to use desk side simply because we're not using a file set as our day-to-day system as you are, but exactly the same functionality works across both systems. So all I've done here is I'm in a workspace and I've got a folder called affidavits in my workspace, and I've got a bunch of documents in there, and I've got a document that I want to send to a client for signature. So I'm just going to highlight the document. It's a client care letter, and I'm just going to right click and then go down and select send by sign for iManage. And on my other screen, that opens up a small window where I can then just add the details to send that document out. So it's attached to the document for me automatically. And all I'm going to do in here is put in my the recipient's email address. I'm sending it to myself in this case, so you can see everything that happens, which I realise is slightly artificial, but you'll get the idea. I can set other elements of security here as well if I want to. So, for example, I could make the signer enter a password before they sign, or I could make them enter a code that was texted to them before they sign, or provide that they have to verify their email address against one of the federated authenticators. So that would be proving, for example, that t.long@zylpha.com can access their account at LinkedIn or Facebook or Google or Yahoo or one of the other federated authentication providers. So there's quite a lot of security that we can add. And we can also make the signers either be an approver or a signer, and you might have a mix across the document. So we'll add the recipient in. We just need to add a subject line in as well, so I'll call this Test for iManage Webinar. Get a little message. Attach the client care letter for signature. Once we've entered the message, then it's simply a question of clicking send. We've got a few other options that we could do at this point. If we had a complicated document and we wanted to add some more fields into that document, then I could have ticked the preview and add signature fields box here, and that would have opened the document on the Adobe website, and I could have added more fields. But for straightforward send, it's as simple as that. Add the document, add the recipients, and then send the document out. Now over on my other screen, I've already had an email from Adobe. They normally process these pretty quickly. So I'll just open that email and slide it on. So this is the email that you're going to get, or that the recipient is going to get. There's some branding options on this, so you can put your logo on it, so it's not going to arrive with a Zylpha or an Adobe logo on it. You can brand it. And you can see here that the signer will see the message that I've inserted, and also the subject line up here that I chose to use as well. And they also get to see a thumbnail of the document, or at least the first page of the document from here. And once I'm ready to go through and sign the document as the signer, I just simply click the link, and that takes me to the Adobe website and loads the document for me to review. Now this works really well on mobile devices as well, and we've done quite a few demonstrations on site for clients where we've sent them a document to review on an iPhone or a mobile device, and it works really neatly. The website that Adobe have developed is very responsive and works well. We'd normally at this point expect the client obviously to go through and review the document and read through it. They do also provide these convenient tabs here. If I were to click on the tab, it would take me down to the first point at which I needed to enter the data or sign the form. And you'll also find as we're going through and filling out data within the form, the document is being auto-saved as we go through. So if you provide a form that's got quite a lot of information that you want the client to fill out, it does get auto-saved. If they abandon that process partway through and then come back to the document later on, it will be they will pick up where they left it off. I'm just going to click in here to sign. Now, I'm going to have an Adobe Sign account, so it's taken the image of my signature that I've associated with that account. But if I don't have an account, and you don't need to have one, so the signers don't need to have one, they'll get presented with a window like this. Now here they've got various options. They could choose to upload an image of their signature if they wanted to and adopt that back to their profile so they could use it in the future, or something as simple as just formatting their name how they want it to appear, and Adobe will turn that into a signature here. Alternatively, if they're on a touchscreen device, and increasingly people are, then they could draw their signature or sign with a pen or their finger if they wanted to. That's very sad that the security options that we talked about here earlier as well would also kick in at this point. So if I'd added security to this document, then I'd have been made to go through those security steps at that point before I signed the document, and that might, for example, have been entering a password or entering a code that was texted to me. Once I've signed the document, I tick the box here just to say that I agree to do terms electronically, because that's what the Electronic Communications Act says I need to do, and then I just simply click the button here to click to sign. So that's going to complete the process from the signer's point of view. Now, a few things are going to happen at this point. We're working with our development account here. We've got our account set to send an email once the signing process has been finished to both the sender and all of the signers for that particular document. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but some of our clients quite like that. So I've just had an email arrive that tells me that, if I open it, there we go, tells me that the document between Zylpha Limited and T.Long is signed and filed. And again, we've got our demo account set to send us a copy of the document. And it's also sent me an audit report as well. So I can use those and file those back into my workspace if I want to. So you don't have to do that. You can disable that very easily from within your Adobe account, but we've got that running on ours really just for convenience and demonstration. Now, the third part of the system was that we wanted to be able to bring the details back into iManage. Now we've got the second part of our integration is a small service that sits and polls Adobe and looking for updates. So if I just do a refresh here. So having just refreshed the workspace, we started off with the client care letter. And if I just take you down and show you the document history for that, we'll see everything that's happened to that one since we sent it out. So we created the document and it was sent for signature. Terribly convenient, slide back across in the history. At nearly 20 past 3. Adobe then created and sent the document out a few seconds later. It was sent to the recipient for signature. It was then viewed by the recipient, and it was then signed and downloaded back into the workspace here. So we've got a full audit log of everything that's happened to that document since it was created and sent. And if we look up here, it's also created our signed document and added that into the workspace, and it's related that document, that's the related link, back to the original client care letter, so we can see that the document that's been signed has been connected back to the original document. So on a big workspace you can see where everything came from. I'll just open that document and show you the PDF one that's come back in. I'm just going to open on the other screen, so slide that back on. So this is the document that we signed. Now, the document I sent out was a Word document, and it just been created the normal way through Word and saved into my workspace. Adobe convert the document into a PDF for the purpose of signature and send it back. There's the signature that we entered. You can also see if I just hover over the item here, the signature is actually a hyperlink, and if I click on the hyperlink, it will take me back to the Adobe website. And I can view an audit report, which is the same audit report that got emailed out to me as the sender. So this is a full audit of everything that's happened to that document. So I've got a secondary means of proving when I sent it, who it was signed by, including the IP address of the machines that we used in the transaction as well. There's quite a lot more that you can do with this. There's the whole question of form filling. We can put fields in documents that could be sent out so that the client can fill out form fields and so for example, a client information form, you might want to have that back in your workspace completed by the client. We can send multiple documents at once to multiple people, and there's various other security things that we can add in it, but that's a fairly simple and straightforward overview, but probably accounts for the larger part of the use cases that we come across. So just going back here, we've reached the questions stage. Just whilst anybody's thinking about any questions that they may have, we're putting together we're just calling it a workbook until we come up with a better name for it. But we've done 4 of these now. This is the 4th webinar we've done on eSignatures. We've had quite a lot of questions across the range of webinars that we've done. So we're going to group all of those together, put them into a workbook, add in useful reference links such as the documents that we've made available today for download, and also just put in our thoughts as to the sort of the top 10 guide to getting the best out of it. And that's really based on 4 or 5 years now of working with clients doing electronic signatures, with case management systems, more recently with things like iManage. So that'll be coming out to you, should be ready by the end of this week or early part of next week, once we've collated all the questions and formatted it all up, and that'll be sent out to everyone that's attended the webinar. We have recorded the session as well, as I said at the beginning, so if anyone's got any requirement to pass this on to anyone else within their organisation that either couldn't see it or hasn't seen it, please feel free to pass that on. We're also going to put the video of the webinar onto our website, so it'll be available there as well. You will get sent a link later tomorrow with the link through to the webinar in the recording of the webinar in GoToWebinar. So I'm just looking across the room at Dave just to see if anyone's any questions. No, we haven't got any questions today, which is great. Hopefully that means that's all made sense. Our contact details up there as well, so I know we know a lot of you on the call today. Please feel free to pick the phone up. We've lived and breathed this for quite a long time now, so we've been asked quite a lot of questions on it, so hopefully we'll be able to answer most of the ones that you have. If you'd like us to arrange something that's a little bit more detailed and looking a bit more specifically at what your own requirements might be, again, just pick the phone up. We can set up sessions like this really quickly and be happy to do that on an individual basis if that helps. So if we have no other questions, it just remains for me to say thanks very much for attending, taking time out this afternoon. Hopefully we'll speak to quite a few of you very soon. Thanks very much.